Hey guys, tonight we're taking you to a place where silence has a sound and the air is so cold it bites your skin like a jealous ghost. You're waking up in Iceland, but not the touristy one with puffins and geothermal spas. No, this is 1703. There are no roads, no electricity, and definitely no TikTok. You live in a sod-roofed turf house, the kind that looks like a hobbit's starter home, but smells like dried fish and damp wool. Life here is beautiful in a brutal sort of way. You're a fisherman because basically everyone is, and your day begins not with a to-do list, but with a prayer that your boat doesn't sink. Oh, and spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this life past your 50s assuming scurvy frostbite or the North Atlantic don't get to you first. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing how far these little sleepy voyages travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your morning begins in darkness. There's not much of a sunrise this time of year, just a shift from absolute black to soft shadowy gray. You blink your way into consciousness beneath a coarse wool blanket, your breath rising in little clouds above your face. The hearth is nothing but cold stones, now the last embers having died sometime before midnight. You've slept beside your children, limbs tangled for warmth, and every joint in your body protests as you sit up. Welcome to Iceland. The first sensation you register is your feet numb from the chill seeping through the earthen floor. You pull on stiff wool socks still damp from yesterday and curse softly under your breath, not loud enough to wake the others. Your wife stirs beside you, murmurs something half lost to sleep. You nod at her, though she can't see it, and rise. The morning begins with silence, as it always does. You fumble for the small lantern near the hearth, flint and steel, catching after 3 attempts. Sparks flare, and soon the glow of whale oil casts dancing shadows on the low, soot-streaked ceiling. You move carefully, the roof beams are low enough to punish the careless with a cracked skull. Outside, the wind growls like a hungry animal just beyond the walls. Everything you own smells faintly of fish. The cloak you throw over your shoulders is no exception coarse stiff with salt and eternally damp. You pull your boots on with effort, the leather stiffened overnight like a forgotten biscuit. Iceland in 1703 doesn't wait for anyone, least of all you. There's no clock ticking, no rooster crowing. You just know. It's time. Your fishing crew expects you. They don't knock. They never do. The understanding is older than the houses themselves. You open the warped wooden door and step out into the bone-chilling air, instantly alert. The world outside is muffled. Snow blankets, everything. Huts, rocks, paths, like a hasty painter's mistake. The cold cuts straight through your layers, no matter how many you've piled on. Your breath clouds in front of you. You walk past the drying racks, empty this early, but waiting. Always waiting. You trudge toward the shore where the boats are pulled up against the ice. The tide's out. The dark rocks of the beach are slick with brine and seaweed crunching underfoot. Your boots slip once and your knee hits a stone hard enough to make your teeth clack. You don't swear out loud, just hiss through clenched teeth. The ocean groans in the distance, ice grinding like old bones. Historians still argue whether daily life for Icelandic fishermen was truly communal hardship or simply the natural rhythm of survival. You don't argue, you just live it. Your fellow fishermen are already gathered near the boats. No one speaks much yet. You all know the drill. Someone hands you your fishing line, coiled and stiff with yesterday's salt. You check it absently, fingers already numb. Someone else coughs hard enough to double over Gudmundur, probably. He's been hacking since the autumn, probably won't last the year. The sky lightens just enough to call it morning. The boats are little more than wooden bathtubs with delusions of grandeur. Yours is painted with pitch to keep out water, but it leaks anyway. You help push it toward the water boots, slipping muscles straining. It creaks like a resentful elder, but it moves. You launch without ceremony. The sea is still for now, which feels more ominous than reassuring. You sit at the oars, arms remembering the motion long before your brain wakes up. Each pull is a reminder, this is what keeps your family alive. This rhythm, this cold, this hunger. There's a moment brief, breathless, when the village disappears behind you and only sea remains. That's when it hits you. The quiet, not silence, but that deep, hollow stillness only the North Atlantic can conjure. It fills your ears and swallows your thoughts. You row into it anyway. The cold stiffens your fingers until they feel like someone else's. A gull screams overhead, and for a second, you envy its wings. Then you shake the thought away. No one envies birds. Birds die too, just messier. Your hands ache with every pull of the oars, but you don't stop. You can't. The sea doesn't care that your knuckles feel like they're cracking open under your mittens. You glance across the boat at Bjarki, whose beard is already collecting frost like some bizarre holiday decoration. He nods, not at you, just at the sea, like he's acknowledging an old frenemy. That's as close to conversation as you'll get this early. Your stomach grumbles. Breakfast. That was a sliver of dried cod and half a barley biscuit 2 hours ago. Maybe less. The biscuit was old enough to have opinions of its own. Still, you don't complain. You just suck your teeth and focus on the horizon, waiting for the cue to stop rowing and start fishing. This is where your day lives now, between the cold wood of the bench and the endless, indifferent water. You reach the drop point, a spot you know not by coordinates, but by the shape of the mountain peeking through the mist and the pattern of bird flight above it. It's a rhythm carved into you by years of repetition. You all ease up on the oars and begin unfurling the hand lines. Hooks baited with chunks of yesterday's catch, or if you're lucky, bits of squid from a trade weeks ago. The lines go overboard without fanfare, just a soft plop, plop, plop into the sea. Then begins the wait. You sit in that rocking little vessel, eyes fixed on the water hands wrapped around the line, waiting for the tiniest twitch that says something alive is down there. Sometimes it takes minutes, other times hours, and sometimes there's nothing at all. That's the worst. Not the cold, not the hunger, the nothing, the void beneath your boat that offers no reply. Today, though, you feel the line jerk, sharp and sudden. You pull, wrist snapping instinctively. Resistance, you grunt. Your boatmates lean in, cod most likely, a good one too, judging by the tug. You haul it in, the line slicing through your palm where your gloves threadbare. Then it breaks the surface, gleaming, spotted thrashing. A solid 4 pounds. You yank it aboard. It flaps violently, thumping against the boat's side like an angry letter from Poseidon himself. You slam it with a wooden mallet quickly, efficiently, not out of cruelty but necessity. One clean blow to the head. The fish stills. Bjarki grins. Good start, he mutters, as if saying too much might jinx it. You nod and reset the line. Rinse and repeat. This is the grind now. Hook, pull, thump, reset. Over and over. A meditative rhythm broken only by the occasional curse when someone loses one, or the sudden sharp cry of seal when one surfaces nearby. The seals know what you're doing, and they're not above stealing your hard-won dinner right off the line. Historians still argue whether 1703 Icelandic fishing methods were primitive or simply brilliant in their simplicity. You tend to side with brilliant mainly because they keep your children fed. You've tried netting once, but the handmade nets tangle more often than they work, and you can't afford another lost haul. Hand lines are slow, but they get the job done. Usually. You catch 7 cod before midday. Your hands are raw, your back is a single line of pain, and your lips are cracked open from wind and salt. But it's a good morning. 7 is enough to keep the fire going at home. Maybe even trade for a bit of rye flour if the storehouse isn't locked again. You wonder if Thora, the merchant's wife, will try to overcharge you like last time. You're too tired to be properly mad about it. One of the crew, young Kolbein, gets a hook through his thumb and tries not to cry. His face goes white. Blood wells up and drips onto the wooden slats. You bite down on a joke about how that's chum now. This is his first winter on the boat, and some lessons don't need salt rubbed into them. Instead, you pass him a rag and tell him to press hard. He nods, eyes glassy. The sea remains strangely calm. A good omen, maybe. Or maybe it's the calm before the inevitable winter tantrum. You never really know. The water stretches endlessly around you, and above the clouds start to shift into those long streaks that mean the wind is thinking about waking up. Time to go in. No one says it, but you all move in sync. Lines are pulled. Fish are counted, sorted by size. The boat turns. The oars hit the water again. And just like that, you're rowing home. Except this time, every muscle in your arms howls in protest. Your palms burn with blisters. You've stopped feeling your toes, but you're hauling food home, and that makes all the difference. Halfway back, you spot a raven on a rock black against the snow, watching like it knows something you don't. Superstitions run deep here. Some say ravens are the ghosts of drowned fishermen. Others say they're messengers of the gods. You just nod at it and keep rowing. The coastline creeps into view, the rooftops of turf homes huddled like sleeping animals against the hills. Smoke curls from a few chimneys. You're close enough now to smell wood smoke and drying fish. Close enough to let your mind wander briefly to food warmth, maybe even sleep. Though let's not get too wild. The boat scrapes against the icy shore with a groan. You jump out, boots hitting the wet rock hard. You pull the boat in, fish slapping in the shallows. No ceremony, no applause. Just another day, another hard-won meal wrestled from the deep. The sled creaks as you pull it up the shore, each fish laid carefully across the wood slats, wrapped in bits of cloth and seaweed to keep them from freezing solid before you get them to the shed. Your arms are rubbery from rowing, but the sled doesn't care. You grunt with each step, boots crunching through slush and gravel as you trudge up the uneven path toward the village's fish-drying racks. A few others are already there, mostly women and older men who can't fish anymore, but still work the drying process. You nod a tired hello to Gudrun, who waves absently while hanging long silvery haddock from a wooden beam. Her hands move automatically, stringing each fish through the gills with a practiced grace. You swear she could do it blindfolded, maybe even asleep. You unload your catch at the communal shed, a slanted roofed structure lined with flat stones and the scent of old salt. Inside, it's somehow colder than outside. That special kind of cold that lives in enclosed spaces, stale, permanent, sharp as broken glass. You lay the fish in tidy rows and take note of the other hauls nearby. Thora's brother caught more than you today. Again, you try not to let the resentment show on your face. The fish will be salted and dried slowly, sometimes smoked if wood is plentiful, which it never is. Driftwood is a treasure, and you're more likely to burn dung than timber in winter. Still, you make do. You always make do. One small fire, a few smoldering coals, and the fish turn from fresh to something that might last the month. Maybe. Historians often point to the Icelanders' fish preservation methods as early examples of sustainable food processing, but that doesn't mean it's glamorous. You've seen too many fish spoil too many sacks lost to mold, or rats to get sentimental about the process. It's just another fight against time and weather. You wrap up your portion of the haul and prepare to trade. The trading post is little more than a reinforced corner of the longhouse guarded by Thora and her ever-present dog, a shaggy creature with one eye and a suspicious nature. You've long suspected the dog likes her more than her own husband does. You push open the thick wooden door, a gust of warm air hitting your face like a soft slap. Inside it smells of dried herbs, grease, and wool. Shelves sag under the weight of jars, bundles of textiles, sacks of coarse flour, and piles of fish hooks carved from antler. The air hums with low chatter and the rustle of cloth. You take a moment to rub your hands near the hearth, flexing your aching fingers before stepping forward. Thora eyes you like she's reading your sins. Caught again, she says more sigh than question. You nod. 7, you reply. Fresh. You leave out the part where you almost lost 2 of them to a seal. No need to advertise weakness. She shrugs and leads you to the back. You know the drill. She gets 3 for her cut. You keep 4. That's the unofficial tax of her monopoly. You'd argue, but you've seen what happens to those who try. They either end up buying back their own fish at double the cost, or worse, get their trade banned entirely. You're not ready to test the waters literally or figuratively. You barter for a half sack of barley and a roll of wool. You eye the coffee, yes, coffee, but it's way beyond your fish budget. That's a luxury only the priest or the Danish merchant drinks. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll trade for the grounds after he's done brewing. Waste, not want, not right. You stuff your goods into your pack and head out bumping shoulders with Einar on the way. She took 3 again, he asks. You grunt in reply. That's answer enough. He spits into the snow. One day we ought to just stop bringing her anything. You raise an eyebrow. And eat raw fish all winter, that shuts him up. You walk past the chapel on your way home, its modest bell tower poking through the mist like a finger raised in warning. Inside, you hear someone playing the harmonium, likely the priest's daughter again. She plays the same 3 hymns over and over, but you don't mind. It makes the road feel less empty, less cold. At your turf house, smoke rises from the small chimney, a hopeful sign. Your wife Aldous meets you at the door with a tired smile. "Any bones left in your arms?" she teases. You shake your head and drop the pack. She helps you inside where the kids are wrapped in furs and half-asleep bellies round with the last of the mashed turnips from yesterday. You're a little jealous. Aldous unwraps the wool you bartered for and eyes it critically. Thin, she mutters, "But better than nothing." She sets to work right away pulling a spindle from the wall. The faint sound of it spinning adds a hypnotic rhythm to the room, like the purr of a distant engine, if you knew what that was. The stew tonight is fish again. Of course it is. But she adds dried dulse and the last carrot, which elevates it into a feast by winter standards. You eat slowly, letting the warmth spread through your chest and out into your stiff limbs. The room smells of salt and smoke, and you don't even mind. As night falls, the wind picks up. You can hear it pressing against the turf walls, testing them, but they hold. For now. You roll into bed with your back still aching, but your belly full. You listen to the wind's low moan, outside the soft breathing of your children, the slow creak of the roof beams. It's enough. You stare at the low ceiling for a moment, then shut your eyes, knowing tomorrow will be much the same. Cold, hard, quiet, but still yours to endure. Morning drips in slowly like honey too cold to flow. The light creeps through the oiled skin, stretched over your window, soft and yellow-gray, filtered by the clouds that have decided not to bother moving today. You blink yourself awake to the soft snuffle of your youngest curling, tighter against your side, one tiny fist clutching your shirt like you might vanish without warning. You don't. You're still here. Somehow. You ease out from under the furs, every joint offering a protest. The hearth's gone cold, and your breath puffs little ghosts into the room. You crouch beside the embers and coax them back to life with a few strips of dried dung and a whisper of pine needles you've hoarded from last summer. They flare up with a stubborn hiss. There's victory in that small blaze. You might not have control over storms or trade, but you can still make fire. The kids start to stir, and your wife gets up without a word, already reaching for the fish stew pot. Reheated for breakfast. Again. The broth has thickened into something gelatinous overnight, and you try not to think about the texture as you scoop it into a bowl. The warmth matters more than the taste. You tell yourself that every day. Outside, the village breathes quietly. Smoke rises in lazy spirals from the scattered turf houses, like each family is exhaling at its own pace. You step out into the whitewashed hush, tugging your coat tighter around your ribs. The wind is playful this morning, lifting snowflakes just enough to sting your cheeks before tumbling them toward the sea. Your first stop isn't the boat today. You've got maintenance to do. The nets need mending. Again. Saltwater and time are enemies to rope and sinew, and there's never enough good material to go around. You join John and 2 others near the racks, a quiet circle of fingers pulling and twisting through knots that feel older than any of you. You'd swear one of these nets predates your marriage, probably your father's or maybe even his. Kari makes a joke about your lousy stitching, and you flip a bit of net at him without lifting your eyes. It's all in good fun. No one wants to fish next to a man who can't take a little ribbing. Still, you're careful to double your knots when he isn't looking. Pride's a quiet thing, stitched in silence and hidden behind your beard. As you work, you overhear Thorstein mutter about a whale sighting near the northern shore. Your ears perk up. Whale meat is rare and sacred, almost mythic, in its potential to feed a family or a dozen for weeks. But so far, no one's been able to confirm it. Historians still argue whether Icelanders in 1703 actively hunted whales or merely scavenged stranded ones. Either way, a whale means hope. Hope and a frenzy of knives. You remember the last one 3 winters ago. The stink of it traveled before the news did. By the time you arrived, it was a sunken carcass barely clinging to its own shape. But that didn't stop anyone. You took what you could, worked your blade until your hands cramped, and brought home enough meat and blubber to last until the spring melt. You smelled like death for days. Worth it. Back at the house, Aldous is boiling water for laundry, a chore that takes hours and a saint's patience. She grumbles about the soapstone heating unevenly, but she doesn't stop. You help carry the water when she lets you, but mostly she shoos you out. You'll just make the clothes dirtier again, she says, half joking. You watch her bent over the basin, red hands scrubbing as if she can erase the smell of fish from every fiber. It's a fight she never wins, but she keeps trying. That's the sort of woman she is. Quietly stubborn, fiercely clean. And you love her in the same way you love breathing automatically constantly without needing to name it. That afternoon, you chop ice from the well using a blunt axe passed down from someone who probably didn't expect it to last this long. The handle's been rewrapped with leather so many times it's twice its original size. You curse every fourth swing, but the rhythm of it calms you even as your knuckles split from the cold. The water beneath the ice is clear and biting. You drink from your cupped hand and it feels like swallowing shards of morning, refreshing in the way that makes your teeth ache. You fill 2 buckets and haul them back up the path, slipping only once a personal record. As evening nears, you help a neighbor repair his roof. A section of turf came loose in last night's wind, revealing a jagged hole that leaks not just warmth, but privacy. You press sod blocks into place like puzzle pieces, each one heavier than it looks. It's hard work, but the kind that leaves you with something tangible, something done. By the time you return home, the kids are playing in the snow, chasing one another with sticks they pretend are swords. You pause to watch, smiling despite yourself. One of them trips and falls, but pops up laughing. For now, the cold hasn't caught them yet. They still believe the world is soft under all this ice. Inside, the fire's crackling again, and dinner is waiting. Not stew this time, but smoked fish, with a smear of skyer. You raise an eyebrow at Aldi's. Felt like spoiling us, she says, and you don't question it. You sit and eat, and the room feels warmer for reasons beyond the flames. Later, you carve a bit of wood into a fishhook, your knife gliding over the grain like a whisper. Your eldest watches you eyes wide. You hand him the piece when you're done. Try it next week, you say. He nods like you've given him a sword. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by steam and salt and simple joys, you feel the weight of the day lift just slightly. Enough. You wake to the sharp crack of wind against your door. Not a knock, not even a gale, just the usual rude reminder that Iceland's weather has no manners. It's dark still, that deep oceanic blue that sits somewhere between night and not yet morning. You pull your furs tighter and debate pretending to be asleep a little longer. But the goats are already bleeding outside and one of the kids is coughing in their sleep, so you swing your legs out from under the warmth and face the cold like an unpaid debt. Breakfast is dried fish and hard bread today. The bread has seen better weeks, maybe even better seasons, but it softens slightly when you dip it in hot water. No butter, of course, not unless someone's cow had a particularly generous week and was willing to share. Butter is still used as a unit of tax after all. And you don't have enough for taxes and toast. You step out into a sharp wind that smells like salt and frozen seaweed. The ground crunches beneath your boots. The village is quiet except for the distant creak of boat ropes and the occasional grunt from someone throwing slop to pigs. You head toward the cove with your tools slung over one shoulder, the ice cracking like old bones beneath your feet in some spots. You test each step, too many hidden pools this time of year. Today you're patching a boat. Not yours. Yours is holding together by some miracle of driftwood and prayers. This one belongs to Thorkel, the elderly man whose joints no longer let him walk without leaning on a carved staff shaped like a seal. He offers you a boiled potato in thanks and insists on sitting nearby while you work, telling you about the winter of 1689 as if you were born yesterday. He's not exaggerating either. That winter nearly wiped out half the village when sea ice blocked the harbor and no one could fish for weeks. He points to the boat's stern. Right there. That plank saved my life. Or maybe it tried to kill me, I can't remember. You laugh partly because it's funny, mostly because the wind's too cold to cry. As you work, your fingers go numb. The tar you're using to seal the cracks is thick and uncooperative, stubborn as a mule, and about as pleasant smelling. You smear it along the seams, pressing it in with a flat bone tool smoothed from years of use. Everything in your life is a hand-me-down, and most of it could probably tell stories better than you. A few meters away, a group of younger boys, barely old enough to row, are arguing over who gets to practice their knots first. You watch them out of the corner of your eye, eager, loud, all elbows and pride. One of them has the kind of bright red hair that'll get him mistaken for a seal if he ever falls in. You shout at them to mind the ice, but of course they don't. Kids never do until it's too late. Historians still argue whether formal maritime training existed for rural Icelandic youths in the 1700s. Judging by these boys, the answer is a resounding nope. You finish the patch, press your thumb into the last strip of tar, and give Thorkel a nod. He tries to pay you in a tiny sack of salt precious stuff, but you shake your head. Keep it for the stew, you say. It's not generosity, it's survival math. If he lives longer, he'll keep telling stories. And if he keeps telling stories, maybe you'll learn something that saves your own hide one day. Lunch is a rushed affair. A piece of dried haddock wrapped in a strip of kelp and washed down with weak birch tea. You chew slowly, mostly because you don't want to think about the next task, gathering seaweed. It's low tide, and you know the rocks will be slick with frozen brine, the wind even worse near the surf. But your wife needs it for the livestock, and you can trade a few bundles inland for wool if you're lucky. The shore smells like old teeth and rot, and the gulls are already circling, complaining loudly about your presence. You wade out with a hooked staff and a basket slung over your back. The seaweed peels away from the rocks, reluctantly sticking like old sins. Every wave that slaps your boots tries to steal your balance. Your toes go numb first, then your ankles. You curse softly, rhythmically, like a chant. You bring in 3 baskets before your fingers stop listening to your brain. That's the limit. Back home, you leave them by the shed for sorting and check the snares you laid yesterday. One's caught a hare, small, white, perfect. You say a quick prayer, not because you think the hare cares, but because your grandmother would have boxed your ears if you didn't. You skin it carefully. Tonight you'll eat well, not luxuriously, but well enough that no one wakes up hungry. As dusk falls, the wind shifts inland, and with it comes a strange smell. Peat smoke mixed with something metallic. You pause, nose lifted. It's not familiar. Something burned, maybe. You walk toward the scent heart, thumping harder than it should. But it's just Asgeir trying to forge a new hook in his shed. He waves at you, face blackened with soot. Looks worse than it is, he grins. Like me. He's got a tiny forge, barely more than a glorified fireplace, but he's managed to turn out 3 hooks and a knife this week. You watch him work for a bit fascinated. Your people aren't known for smithing. Not really. But when you've got iron scraps and more desperation than tools, you learn. There's a fringe theory among scholars that rural Icelanders were more self-reliant than previously documented. You believe it. Night sets in. Your legs ache and the hair is cooling by the hearth. You settle into the warmth of your home with a long sigh, the kind that comes from surviving one more day without injury loss or unusual visitors. The kids are giggling over some nonsense, and your wife is humming an old song while stirring a pot. You don't know the words anymore, but the tune's familiar enough to rest in. And that's the thing, isn't it? The routine, the repetition, the quiet lives you lead out here, they're not empty. They're full of tiny moments that matter more than they seem. A patch of good weather, a friend's thanks, a pot of tea, not too bitter. There's dignity in the grind. Even if your boots are wet, your hands cracked, and the sea never stops trying to kill you. You wake once again to the chill of dawn brushing past your thin curtain. The sea calls even if you're not quite ready to answer. You rub the sleep from your eyes and listen for the sounds that tell you how the day will unfold. The distant squawk of seabirds, the crackle of frost on wooden beams, the muffled cough of your neighbor coughing through the cold. It's the same sound every morning, but it always feels new, like the world is pressing reset. Today, you have to check the traps along the rocky shoreline. Not the easy part of the day, but necessary. The frozen water makes each step a gamble. You haul yourself out of the warm nest of furs, catching the edge of the bedpost before you lose balance. Aldous is already awake, hands busy at the spinning wheel, the low whir blending with the wind outside. She glances up, eyes bright, despite the early hour. "Coffee's not a thing here," she says with a tired grin, "but this birch tea will do for now." You take the cup warm and slightly bitter and sip it slowly, letting the heat chase the cold from your chest. Outside, the village is still mostly silent, except for a few figures bundled in wool moving between houses. The sky is a vast dome of pale gray, holding its breath. You strap on your boots, thick wool socks, and coat before stepping into the frozen world. The snow crunches underfoot as you make your way to the first trap, hidden just beneath a ledge where the tide can't reach. Your hands are clumsy at first, the cold making everything stiff and slow. You loosen the snare, carefully checking for any catch. A small bird, frozen solid, lies limp in the trap. It's a meager prize, but enough to supplement a meal. You whisper a quick apology before releasing it from the wire. Birds don't feed your family, but maybe you can trade feathers or eggs in the spring. Further down the rocky beach, you find a better catch of fox trapped overnight. You check its condition. It's alive but sluggish. Hunting foxes isn't common here, but their fur is prized. You debate quickly, remembering your wife's worried face when you first mentioned trapping fur-bearing animals. But the thought of warm pelts during the brutal winter pushes you forward. You drag the fox back toward the village, feeling its weight through the frozen grass and thin ice patches. The wind picks up, slicing through your coat, reminding you how small you are against this landscape. The ocean beyond crashes with the kind of fury that could swallow you whole without a second thought. You laugh quietly. "You probably won't survive this," you mutter to yourself, but that's not new. Arriving home, the fire crackles, and Aldous has begun preparing stew with yesterday's hare. The smell fills the cramped room with a promise of warmth and fullness. You set the fox carefully by the door, already thinking about the work ahead: skinning, curing, preserving. The rest of the day blends into itself, mending nets by the firelight, watching the smoke curl from chimneys, sharing quiet conversations with neighbors who understand exactly what today meant. You catch snippets of gossip about ships lost to storms and strange lights seen near the cliffs. Stories travel fast in a village where news is as valuable as fish. You think about the whalers again, whether they truly hunted the giants of the deep or simply scavenged what fate offered. Some say it's a cruel myth, others swear it's truth. Historians still argue, but out here, the sea tells no lies. It only takes. By evening, you're exhausted, but content. The fox's pelt is stretched over a frame, drying slowly, while the kids listen wide-eyed to an old saga your father once told you. Outside, the moon rises pale and thin, casting long shadows that dance like ghosts on the snow. You sit by the fire, feeling the quiet pulse of life around you, the slow rhythm of survival stitched together with hope and stubbornness. In this world, every small victory is a story worth telling. Every cold morning, every patched net, every shared meal. You lean back, letting the silence settle, knowing that tomorrow will demand the same courage and grit. But for now, the warmth in your belly and the soft murmur of family is enough. The morning air carries a different chill today, sharper somehow, like it's warning you to be on your toes. You slip out of bed carefully, mindful not to wake the children, though their dreams seem restless as the wind outside. The faint glow of dawn barely touches the horizon, and you pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders, stepping outside into a world cloaked in mist. The village is quieter than usual, the usual bustle replaced by hushed voices and quick, purposeful movements. You spot a few men gathered near the harbor, their faces drawn and serious. Word has spread quickly. Another fishing boat, out past the reef, has not returned. The sea has claimed it, or something else has, no one knows yet. You join them, feeling the weight of uncertainty settle on your chest. The boats here are simple wooden hulls, hand-carved oars, and patched sails held together by hope and prayer. You admire their sturdiness every time you see one, but out here, sturdiness is often a thin line between life and death. Historians still argue whether the design changes of the early 1700s actually improved survival rates or merely gave fishermen false confidence. The men speak in low tones, planning a search party to brave the waves and the unpredictable currents. You volunteer even though your boat is barely seaworthy. It's not pride, it's necessity. Everyone's survival depends on knowing what happened, and no one else can be spared. The sea air grows colder as you push off from the shore, your fingers numb against the rough rope, and the sound of waves slapping the hull mixes with the creaking wood. The rhythm is familiar, almost hypnotic, as you row out past the safety of the bay. The ocean's vastness presses down on you, a silent threat lurking beneath the surface. As you scan the horizon, your mind wanders to the stories your grandfather used to tell, the ones about sea monsters and cursed sailors. Most dismiss them as old wives' tales, but sometimes when the fog rolls in thick, you wonder if there's truth hidden beneath the myths. Some villagers claim to have seen glowing eyes watching from the depths, but the elders say those are just the reflections of their own fears. Hours pass with no sign of the missing boat. The wind picks up and you feel the first sting of salt spray against your face. Your muscles ache from rowing, but the thought of the families waiting back home pushes you forward. You remind yourself that you're not alone. The others are out here with you, bound by the same stubborn determination. Suddenly a shout breaks the tension. One of the men points toward a piece of driftwood bobbing in the waves. As you draw closer, you see fragments of a torn sail tangled in seaweed. The search turns grim, but the men work silently, collecting every piece they can find. You think about the lost crewmen like you who face the sea every day, hoping to return with fish, but prepared for anything. Back on shore, the village awaits news with bated breath. The captain's widow stands by the docks, her hands clenched so tightly, her knuckles turn white. You approach her quietly, offering what little comfort words can provide. There's a fragile kind of bravery in her eyes, the same kind you wear like armor every day. The night falls heavy, and still the stars barely visible through the thick clouds. You sit by your fire, the events of the day weighing on your mind. Tomorrow will bring more work, more risk, and more of the quiet resilience that defines your life here. But tonight you let yourself feel the ache, because that's part of being human, even in a place as remote and unforgiving as this. The frost on the window panes catches the first fragile light of morning as you rise, muscles still sore from yesterday's search. The village stirs slowly, each movement muffled beneath layers of wool and thick boots. You linger by the hearth, sipping the weak birch tea. Aldous prepared the warmth spreading through your fingers as you stare into the dancing flames. There's something comforting in the repetition, the slow unraveling of the day like a well-worn thread. Outside, the sky is a patchwork of grayish clouds hanging low like a blanket that refuses to lift. You head toward the communal drying racks where fish hang in neat rows, their silvery skins catching what little light filters through. The smell is sharp, a mix of salt, and something richer, the scent of survival itself. You run your hand along the rough wood, feeling the pulse of generations who lived by these rhythms. You join John, the village's eldest fisherman, as he inspects the catches, nodding at some and frowning at others. John's face is a map of storms weathered and winters endured. He tells you about a new technique he's been experimenting with, using thicker nets to catch larger fish. It might change everything he says, though his tone is cautious. Historians still argue whether such innovations truly transformed Icelandic fishing, or if tradition held stronger sway. As the day unfolds, you're drawn into the delicate dance of preparation and patience. Mending nets, stacking firewood, trading small favors with neighbors, all essential parts of the quiet machinery that keeps the village alive. There's a rhythm here, a pulse that beats beneath the harsh surface, steady and unyielding. At midday, you help haul a fresh catch from the boat's herring, shiny and thrashing their bodies, flickering like quicksilver. The work is hard, the net's heavy and soaked, but the reward is immediate fish to dry, to salt to share. The village depends on this bounty, each fish a promise of warmth and fullness when winter's grip tightens again. You pause by the shore to watch the gulls dive and wheel their cries sharp against the muted backdrop of sea and sky. One swoops low, a flash of white against the dark waves, and you wonder about their freedom, how they traverse this vast cold world without fear. You envy them just a little. They don't have to count calories or patch leaks. Later, as you work beside the fire, you share stories with the younger men. Tales of giant whales tangled in nets of fishermen lost, but saved by lucky stars of strange lights dancing on the horizon. There's always a hint of disbelief, a spark of wonder. Some believe in omens, others in pure chance. Historians still argue whether these stories served as practical warnings or simply folklore spun from loneliness. Your hands move methodically, weaving and tying the motions as familiar as breathing. The sun dips low, casting long shadows that stretch like fingers across the frozen ground. You think about the lives tangled in these nets, fathers, sons, wives, children, and the fragile thread that connects you all. Night comes softly folding over the village like a velvet curtain. The sea's murmur is a lullaby, steady and sure. You settle in feeling the weight of the day, lift replaced by the quiet satisfaction of work done well. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but for now there is peace in the simple acts of survival and community. The morning light creeps slowly through the narrow window slats, and you find yourself awake before the village stirs. The air is sharp, carrying that unmistakable scent of salt and cold stone that clings to the harbor. You pull on your boots, worn and patched more times than you can count, and step outside into the brittle dawn. Today is market day, a rare event in your remote village, when the slow drip of daily life quickens with visitors and traders. You trudge along the frozen path toward the small cluster of tents and carts near the main dock. The murmur of voices rises in the crisp air, mixed with the clink of metal and the occasional bark of a dog. It's a welcome break from the usual quiet. You pause to examine the goods on offer: smoked fish, packed neatly in bundles, dried seaweed, tied with rough twine, and curious trinkets fashioned from bone and driftwood. The traders come from distant parts of Iceland and even beyond, bringing news stories and wares from places you'll never see. One man sells colorful beads said to bring good luck, while another offers strange spices with scents sharp enough to clear your sinuses. The market buzz is punctuated by the laughter of children chasing each other, their cheeks flushed from the cold. You catch a glimpse of the village healer, a woman with kind eyes and hands, always busy with herbs and remedies. She warns that this winter will be particularly harsh, citing unusual weather patterns no one fully understands. Historians still argue whether these early weather records hinted at larger climate shifts or were just seasonal anomalies. You trade a few salted fish for some hard cheese and a small bag of dried herbs. Bartering is as old as the sea itself, here a dance of needs and favors that binds the community. As you haggle, you overhear whispers about a strange light seen over the northern cliffs the previous night. Some say it was the aurora. Others believe it was something more mysterious. Back home, Aldise is busy preparing the evening meal, her fingers nimble despite the cold. You tell her about the market, the trades, and the stories, feeling the familiar warmth of shared routine. The children gather around, eager for tales of far-off places and the wonders hidden beyond the horizon. You oblige with a story about the elusive sea serpents said to roam these waters, their existence debated fiercely, even among scholars. As the sun sinks low, you take a moment outside to breathe in the briny air. The sky shifts colors, softening into hues of pink and lavender. The village settles into its evening rhythm, fires flickering in windows, and the soft murmur of voices blending with the distant crash of waves. You think about the cycles that govern your life here, work-rest community, and how each day threads seamlessly into the next. The quiet lives of fishermen are not marked by grand gestures, but by steady endurance and a stubborn hope. It's a life that demands respect for the sea and a deep understanding of its moods. Tonight, as you lay your head down, the stories from the market mingle with the steady pulse of the ocean. They remind you that even in isolation, your world is part of a vast and interconnected web. And sometimes that thought is enough to carry you through the darkest nights. The sky is a dull, steely gray as you step outside the horizon, blurred by a thin veil of mist that muffles the world. Today, you're called to check the long lines of cod traps set just beyond the bay, a task that demands patience and care. You tighten the thick leather straps on your gloves and breathe in the icy air, feeling the sting on your lungs. Walking toward the rocky shoreline, you notice the frost clinging to every surface, the jagged stones, the sparse grass, even the weather-beaten fishing huts. The cold here isn't just a temperature, it's a presence that shapes your every movement like an invisible weight you carry with quiet resolve. Aldous reminds you to wrap your scarf tighter, her eyes filled with both worry and trust. The traps are heavy with catch, some filled with writhing cod, others disappointingly empty. You work methodically, pulling each trap ashore, untangling lines stiff from salt and ice. The work is repetitive, almost meditative, broken only by the sharp cries of gulls circling overhead. Their presence is both comforting and unsettling. They are survivors like you, but with wings. You pause to rest, scanning the choppy waters beyond. The sea's surface reflects the gray sky, a mirror to a world that feels frozen in time. You think about the men who came before, those who first mapped these coasts and risked everything for a living from the sea. Their stories passed down in sagas and song remind you that survival here has always been a mix of skill, luck, and stubbornness. A sudden gust of wind blows salt spray across your face, and you pull your coat tighter. There's talk in the village of a new type of boat being built designed to better withstand the fierce storms that lash the coast. Historians still argue whether these innovations truly saved lives or simply encouraged fishermen to take riskier ventures. You carry the fish back to the village, the familiar smell filling your nostrils, a reminder that each catch is a small victory. The children run ahead, their laughter cutting through the cold air, a bright spark against the gray backdrop. You smile, thinking about how this life, harsh as it is, still holds moments of joy. At home, Aldous has started preparing the fish for drying. The process is slow, requiring constant attention to prevent spoilage. You help by stacking the racks and checking for any signs of rot. It's a labor born from necessity, but also from respect for the sea's gifts. As evening falls, you gather with the other men to discuss the day's work and the challenges ahead. The conversations drift to strange sightings, at sea glimmers of light, odd sounds, and other mysteries that fuel both fear and fascination. Some believe these are signs from the gods, others dismiss them as tricks of the weather. You return home to the soft glow of the fire, feeling the day's fatigue settle into your bones. The quiet hum of the village at night is a soothing backdrop as you prepare for rest. Outside, the sea whispers its eternal song, a reminder that tomorrow will demand the same resilience and quiet courage. You close your eyes, the memories of the day folding gently into dreams, carrying you through the long Icelandic night. A thick fog blankets the village as you step outside, muffling sounds and softening the edges of the familiar landscape. The damp chill seeps through your clothes, making every movement feel heavier, slower. It's the kind of morning where the sea and sky blend into one endless gray, and even the gulls seem reluctant to take flight. You head to the harbor to check on the newly mended nets. They hang like ghostly curtains swaying gently in the cold breeze. Repairing nets is an art. Every stitch matters, each knot a silent promise that the coming haul won't end in disappointment. John, ever the perfectionist, inspects your work, offering a nod of approval that feels like gold. There's a story he shares, a bit quirky, but well-loved fisherman once believed that talking to the nets would encourage the fish to come closer. Some still whisper words of encouragement before setting them out to sea. Historians still argue whether these rituals had any impact or were simply comforting traditions against the ocean's indifference. You help lower the nets into the water, feeling the familiar resistance as the ropes slide through your hands. The cold bite of the sea spray is sharper today, making your skin prickle. Watching the nets disappear beneath the surface, you wonder how many fish will be caught and how many will escape an eternal gamble with the sea's moods. As you turn back toward the village, you pass the bakery where the scent of fresh rye bread spills into the street, a small luxury in this harsh place. You make a mental note to bring some home for Aldous. Food here is more than sustenance. It's comfort and connection. The day unfolds slowly, filled with routine tasks, mending, hauling, sorting. The camaraderie among fishermen is quiet, but real, built on shared hardship and a mutual respect for the sea's power. You notice the younger men learning from the elders, absorbing not just skills, but stories and warnings. In the afternoon, you join a small group discussing the latest news from the southern towns. There's talk of new fishing regulations being proposed by distant authorities aiming to protect stocks but threatening the fragile balance of your livelihood. The debate is heated. Some welcome the change, others fear it will cripple their way of life. You find yourself reflecting on the delicate balance between tradition and progress. This tension has shaped Icelandic fishing communities for centuries. Historians still argue whether such interventions helped preserve the industry or merely postponed inevitable decline. As the sun dips low, the village gathers for a simple meal, shared stories filling the warm, smoky air. You listen to tales of daring rescues, sea creatures glimpsed in moonlight, and the odd superstitions that persist despite centuries of rationality. Lying in bed later, you hear the wind rise again, outside a restless force that won't be tamed. You close your eyes, feeling the deep connection to this place, the sea, the village, the endless sky, and the quiet life that binds it all together. The dawn breaks pale and fragile like a whispered secret, and you find yourself drawn once more to the shoreline. The sea today is restless waves pounding the rocks with a steady, relentless rhythm. You pull your coat tighter, feeling the cold seep into your bones, a reminder that here, the sea rules all. You join the others in preparing the boats, checking every plank and rope for weaknesses. The vessels are sturdy but old, their wooden hulls scarred by years of storms and salt. Each boat carries the weight of countless journeys, stories etched into every crack and splinter. John jokes that the boats have more scars than the fishermen themselves, and you almost believe it. There's an unspoken tension in the air as you push off from shore, the oars cutting through the icy water. You're heading out further today, chasing shoals of fish rumored to have migrated closer to these cold waters. It's a gamble, go too far, and risk the storm, stay too close, and risk a poor catch. You recall the peculiar practice of carrying a carved figurehead on some boats believed to ward off evil spirits. The origin of these talismans is murky, blending pagan and Christian traditions. Historians still argue whether these superstitions genuinely influenced fishing fortunes or served as psychological comfort against the sea's caprice. The rhythm of rowing is hypnotic muscles, burning breath, forming clouds in the frigid air. The sea sprays against your face, salty and sharp, waking every nerve. You scan the horizon eyes, searching for the telltale flicker of fish breaking the surface or the shadow of seabirds diving. Suddenly the call comes, a shout sharp and urgent. A nearby boat has caught a massive haul cod so large they barely fit in the nets. The men work quickly, hauling the bounty with grunts and laughter, the mood lifting like sunlight through clouds. Back on shore, the catch is sorted and salted, the pungent aroma filling the drying sheds. You marvel at the bounty, so much life wrested from the sea's depths. It's a testament to skill, knowledge, and a touch of luck. You wonder how many generations of fishermen have stood here, hands stained with salt and hope. In the evening, you gather around the fire with John and others, sharing stories and plans. There's talk of changing tides, both literal and figurative, how the village might adapt to new realities, shifting fish patterns, and growing outside pressures. The debate is thoughtful, cautious, filled with respect for what's come before and what might come next. As night deepens, the sea's steady song lulls you toward sleep. You feel the weight of your place in this endless cycle, the quiet lives shaped by wind, waves, and time. The morning air feels different today, heavier somehow, as if the sea itself is holding its breath. You step out, noticing the sharp bite of cold that cuts through your layers and the familiar crunch of frost underfoot. The village is just beginning to stir. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, mingling with the salt-scented breeze. You make your way to the communal drying racks, where rows of fish hang like silent sentinels, their skins taut and pale in the muted light. The process is painstaking, demanding careful attention to weather and timing. Too much moisture and the catch spoils. Too dry and the fish becomes brittle and worthless. It's a dance with nature's rhythms, one that requires patience and keen observation. Ira Kerr, the oldest fisherman in the village, shares a story about an ancient drying technique involving pine smoke that was said to impart a unique flavor and preserve the fish longer. While the method faded with time, some families still swear by its subtle benefits. Historians still argue whether these old practices significantly extended shelf life or were more about ritual and identity. You check the racks for signs of mold or damage, carefully repositioning fish as needed. Your hands, roughened and scarred, move with practiced ease, a testament to years of repetition. Nearby, the children play quietly, their laughter carried on the wind, a reminder of continuity amid hardship. The village's quiet hum is punctuated by the distant tolling of the church bell, marking the hour and anchoring the day's flow. You pause to listen, the sound deep and resonant, connecting past and present in a way that feels almost sacred. Religion and superstition coexist here, sometimes uneasily shaping the villagers' relationship with the sea and each other. As the afternoon sun weakly pushes through clouds, you join a small group discussing the latest catch reports and weather forecasts. There's an undercurrent of concern changes in fish migration patterns, hinting at larger environmental shifts. The village depends on the sea, but the sea is changing in ways no one can fully predict. You reflect on how this fragile balance defines life here, the constant negotiation between human will and nature's unpredictability. It's a truth both humbling and empowering, grounding you in a shared experience passed down through generations. As evening falls, you sit by the fire with Aldous, the warmth easing the chill from your bones. You talk quietly about hopes for the future, the next season's plans, and the enduring mystery of the sea's depths. The night stretches ahead, calm and steady, carrying you softly toward rest. The sun peeks timidly over the horizon, casting a faint, golden glow on the ice-speckled waves. You wrap your scarf tighter, feeling the familiar mix of excitement and fatigue that comes with the beginning of another long day at sea. The village is quiet save for the rhythmic creaking of boats rocking gently against the docks. You join John and the others to prepare the fishing gear for a longer expedition. This trip will take you farther from home than usual, venturing into waters where the sea is rumored to be both more bountiful and more unforgiving. The men share stories of past trips, some triumphant, others marked by narrow escapes and whispered superstitions. One such tale involves the Huldufolk hidden people believed to inhabit the rocky outcrops and cliffs. Fishermen sometimes left small offerings to these invisible guardians to ensure safe passage and a generous catch. Historians still argue whether these beliefs had practical effects or were simply a way to cope with the sea's uncertainty. You help load the boats, checking lines and nets with meticulous care. The air is thick with anticipation, punctuated by the occasional bark of a dog or the distant call of a seabird. The sky overhead is a canvas of soft pastels promising a calm day, though you know better than to trust appearances fully. Pushing off from shore, the rhythm of rowing quickly establishes itself, a steady meditative beat against the backdrop of the lapping waves. You feel the salty spray on your face and the cold bite of the wind, a bracing contrast to the warmth of the boat's wooden frame. Hours pass in this suspended state, the horizon stretching endlessly in every direction. You scan the waters for signs of fish, watching the behavior of gulls and the subtle shifts in wave patterns. The work demands a sharp eye and an understanding that comes only with experience. When the nets finally come up heavy, the mood lightens with the promise of a good catch. Laughter breaks out as the men share jokes and tease one another, the camaraderie, a vital balm against the harsh environment. Back on shore, the community gathers to help unload and sort the fish. The air fills with the tangy scent of salt and brine, mingling with the earthy aroma of drying wood and smoke. You feel a deep connection to these moments, a shared rhythm of effort and reward. As night falls, you retreat to your small home, the fire crackling softly. Aldous prepares a simple meal, and you exchange quiet smiles, the day's weariness melting into comfort. Outside, the sea whispers its age-old lullaby, carrying you gently into dreams. The wind has shifted overnight, carrying with it a faint but distinct smell of seaweed. And something else, something unfamiliar. You pull your coat tighter around your frame and step out into the chill dawn, the village still cloaked in that eerie half-light where the world seems to hold its breath. Today, the sea feels different, more mysterious, almost watchful. Walking toward the cliffs, you notice small, odd shapes scattered among the rocks, driftwood carved by waves into curious forms, or so you think at first. Villagers whisper about sea ghosts, strange figures that appear briefly before vanishing into the mist. Some claim they're omens. Others say it's just the mind playing tricks. Historians still argue whether such sightings were genuine or folk tales born from isolation and harsh living. You join a small group gathered near the shoreline, where John recounts tales of fishermen who vanished without a trace, swallowed by the sea, or lost in storms. The sea, he says with a wink, has a sense of humor, but it's a deadly one. You nod, though inwardly, you wonder if the sea is more indifferent than cruel. The day's work begins with hauling in the nets heavy with cod and haddock. Your muscles ache from the cold and effort, but the reward is worth it. The fish glisten scales catching the pale light like scattered coins, a reminder of the sea's generosity despite its dangers. Later, you help mend nets alongside the younger men who listen eagerly as you share advice passed down from your father and grandfather. The old techniques honed over centuries seem almost sacred. You marvel at how much knowledge is held in simple knots and careful stitches. In the afternoon, you visit the village smithy, where tools and boat parts are forged and repaired. The rhythmic clang of hammer on metal echoes like a heartbeat, steady and strong. The smith, a burly man named Sigurdur, jokes that without his work, none of you would last a week on the water. Evening draws near, and you pause to watch the sun slip behind distant mountains, casting long shadows over the village. The sky turns soft shades of pink and purple, a fleeting beauty before the long Icelandic night. The day's toil feels distant now, replaced by a quiet satisfaction. Back home, Aldous prepares the evening meal, the scent of fresh bread mingling with the salty tang of dried fish. You eat slowly, savoring the flavors and the warmth of the fire. Outside, the wind hums softly through the eaves, a lullaby for the quiet lives shaped by the sea. You settle into bed, the weight of the day fading into dreams woven from salt and shadow. The morning frost glistens on rooftops, catching the weak sunlight like scattered diamonds, and you step outside to a village wrapped in silence. There's a stillness today, the kind that feels both peaceful and full of unspoken things. The sea, visible beyond the houses, stretches flat and gray, its surface mirror-like under the pale sky. You head toward the boats, joining the crew in preparing for a short trip to check on the lobster traps set days earlier. Lobster fishing is a small but vital part of village life, offering a different rhythm and a chance to diversify the catch. It requires patience, waiting for the crustaceans to crawl into the traps drawn by bait, unaware of the fate that awaits. There's a local legend you recall about a giant lobster said to roam the deep waters, capable of dragging entire boats beneath the waves. While most dismiss it as a tall tale, some old fishermen swear they've seen the creature's massive claws emerging from the depths. Historians still argue whether such stories were cautionary myths or early sailors' exaggerated reports. The trip out is calm, the sea's surface unbroken except for the occasional ripple. You work quietly, pulling up traps one by one, the click of claws and the splash of water punctuating the morning. The lobsters vary in size, some small and skittish, others large and formidable. Back on shore, the village women gather to clean and prepare the lobsters, their skilled hands moving swiftly despite the chill. The communal effort reinforces bonds between families, a social fabric woven as tightly as the fishing nets. Later, you visit the small chapel on the hill, a simple wooden structure overlooking the village. It's a place for reflection and prayer, especially for the fishermen before heading out to sea. The bell tolls softly, a sound that carries over the wind like a heartbeat, steady and reassuring. The day continues with mending gear, trading news, and quiet moments of rest. You find yourself thinking about the fragile balance between human endeavor and nature's will, the endless cycle of effort, reward, and loss. As twilight deepens, you walk along the shoreline, watching the waves lap gently against the rocks. The village glows softly behind you, lights twinkling like stars come to earth. You feel the comforting weight of tradition and community settle over you, a steady anchor in an uncertain world. Night falls slowly, and you drift to sleep to the sound of the sea's constant whisper. The gray dawn breaks slowly, fingers of light creeping over the sea's restless surface. You move through the village streets, noticing how the cold air sharpens every sound, the crunch of boots on gravel, the soft murmur of conversation, the distant call of a gull. There's a rhythm to this place, subtle but persistent, like the beating of a heart beneath the calm exterior. Today's task is hauling in the long-line fishing gear, a method used to catch larger fish such as cod and halibut. The lines stretch for miles, baited with care and patience, drifting beneath the waves like invisible threads connecting you to the deep. The work is demanding, requiring strength and teamwork as the lines are pulled in and the catch sorted. A curious fact comes to mind. Icelandic fishermen in the 1700s used bone hooks carved meticulously by hand, sometimes adorned with tiny symbols believed to bring luck. These artifacts reveal the blend of practical skill and superstition that permeated daily life. Historians still argue whether these symbols influenced catch success or were purely decorative. As the sun climbs, the crew shares quiet jokes and stories, their voices carrying over the water. The camaraderie is a crucial lifeline, helping to stave off the isolation and danger of long hours at sea. You feel it too, a connection not just to the men beside you, but to generations who have faced the same endless horizon. Once the catch is secured, the journey back begins, the boats slicing through choppy waters. The wind picks up, carrying with it the scent of salt and seaweed, a bracing reminder that the ocean is never still for long. You steady yourself against the rocking deck, eyes scanning the sky for signs of weather changes. Back on shore, the fish are cleaned and salted, the pungent aroma a constant companion. You notice the quiet efficiency of the women preparing the preservation sheds, their work as vital as the men's. The division of labor here is a dance perfected over centuries, each role respected and essential. As evening descends, you join others in the village hall, where news and gossip flow freely alongside cups of warm drink. The walls are adorned with old nets and fishing tools, reminders of the community's shared heritage and resilience. You reflect on the delicate balance between reliance on nature and the need to adapt. The sea provides, but it demands respect and humility. It's a relationship defined by uncertainty, shaped by history, and lived daily in this quiet, rugged place. Night wraps the village in a soft, dark blanket, and you fall asleep with the sea's lullaby in your ears. The pale light of dawn filters through frost-crusted windows as you rise to another day, carved from sea and stone. The village wakes slowly, each person moving with the careful deliberation honed by years of toil and survival. Outside, the air is crisp and sharp, carrying the unmistakable scent of cold salt and wet earth. You join a small crew preparing for a coastal survey, a journey to map the shoreline and note any changes since the last trip. The maps are rudimentary, sketched on parchment with ink made from local plants and soot, but they serve as vital tools for navigation and planning. The men joke that their maps are more art than science, but even that art has saved lives. An unusual fact stands out. In 1703, Iceland conducted the first comprehensive census, counting every household and individual, including fishermen like you. It was an attempt by Danish rulers to better understand their remote territory, and it provides historians with a remarkable snapshot of everyday life. Historians still argue whether the census data fully captured the complexities of rural communities or glossed over them. The survey begins with careful observations, rocks, inlets, and hidden reefs cataloged with notes passed between men. The work demands keen eyesight and intimate knowledge of the sea's moods. You listen to the quiet commands and responses, the sound of boots on gravel mingling with the calls of distant seabirds. As you move along the coast, you spot a patch of rare wild flowers growing near the water's edge, their delicate petals a surprising burst of color in the harsh landscape. It's a reminder that life here is tenacious and often quietly beautiful. You think about how the fishermen's lives intertwine with these natural rhythms, each small bloom a symbol of resilience. Back in the village, you record the day's findings with Jan, whose steady hand ensures the notes will survive harsh weather and time. The work may seem mundane to outsiders, but it feels like a vital thread connecting past, present, and future. Evening arrives with a soft glow, and you gather with the community for a simple meal. The conversation drifts from weather patterns to tales of sea monsters and legendary storms. These stories, half true and half imagined, form the fabric of shared identity, a way to confront the vast unknown. You sit quietly, feeling the weight of history settle around you. Here in this quiet place, the lives of fishermen ripple outward through time, carried on waves and whispered in wind. The night deepens, and you close your eyes to the gentle murmur of the sea. The final light of day slips beneath the horizon, and you stand on the shore, watching the sky fade from burnt orange to deep indigo. The village behind you is quiet now, lanterns flickering in windows like fireflies caught in glass. Tonight feels different, more profound, as if the sea itself holds its breath, waiting for something unseen. You think back to the many days spent in these quiet rhythms, the endless dance of preparation, labor, and rest that defines life here. The fishermen's lives are marked by routine, but shadowed by uncertainty, a delicate balance between hope and hardship. The cold ocean wind brushes your face, carrying whispers of centuries past. In the stillness, you recall the old tales, the legends of Huldufolk hidden in the rocks, the giant lobsters lurking beneath the waves, and the sea ghosts glimpsed in the mist. These stories, part myth and part memory, reveal the human need to find meaning in the vast unknown. Historians still argue whether these myths shaped behavior or simply comforted the lonely. Tonight, you notice the constellations above their ancient patterns unchanged despite the relentless march of time. The stars guide you as surely as the fisherman's knots and nets a celestial map as vital as any parchment chart. You walk back to your small home, the sound of waves gently breaking against the shore, a familiar lullaby. Inside, Aldous waits with a quiet smile and a warm fire, the hearth a beacon of safety and comfort amid the wildness outside. Sitting by the fire, you reflect on the endurance of this way of life, the resilience born of connection to the sea, the land, and each other. It is a life that demands respect for nature's power and gratitude for its gifts. As sleep beckons, you feel the comforting weight of tradition and the soft pulse of the sea's endless song. Tomorrow will bring another day, shaped by the tides, but for now, you rest. The night deepens gently now, and your breath slows to match the calm, steady rhythm of the waves outside your window. The cold wind has softened to a whisper, brushing through the grass like a lover's sigh. All around you, the quiet of the Icelandic night settles like a soft blanket drawing you closer to peace. Imagine yourself wrapped in warmth, tucked away from the vast sea's mystery and the biting chill of dawn. The village sleeps cocooned in the gentle pulse of life that has carried on here for centuries. Each star overhead shines like a guardian, watching over you steady and true. There's no rush, no urgency, only the slow unfolding of time and the soothing hush of nature's lullaby. Let the images of rolling waves, rocky shores, and simple wooden boats drift gently through your mind like clouds passing a twilight sky. The lives of those fishermen remind you that even in the harshest places, there is quiet beauty and enduring hope. You are part of that rhythm now, connected by stories whispered on the wind and carried across the sea. So breathe deeply, let your thoughts soften, and allow sleep to take you on its slow, steady journey. The quiet lives of Icelandic fishermen will keep watch steady and enduring until morning's light. Good night.